My story of the week starts off from a TV show I recently watched where a woman, let's call her Mary, was engaged and her fiance, Louis, cheated on her with none other than her own sister, Shelley. Mary then breaks off the engagement and ends up going on what was supposed to be her honeymoon trip by herself. When she comes back, her sister, Shelley, says, Mary, you're taking things too far. As in, she, Mary, the person who was cheated on and betrayed, should start speaking to her sister again. And Mary was completely baffled because her sister had the audacity to say that she was selfish for not interacting with her. Mary tells her sister to leave her alone because the sister was now dating the ex fiance. These were the two people she trusted the most, and they both betrayed her. They were uncomfortable that she was no longer in their lives. And instead of taking accountability for betraying Mary, they wanted her to people please and just let things go, which is crazy, right? And I've had an episode on people pleasing before, so make sure you go and check that out. But I wanted to bring this back because I have so much to say on this topic as a recovering people pleaser. So, welcome back to another episode of Lush Life No Labels, a podcast about living your most luscious life on your own terms, exploring the struggles and joys of self improvement, and today through relationships. I'm your host, Fatu. Make sure to click the follow button to access all my past and upcoming episodes. Especially for this episode, definitely go back and check out my previous recovering people pleaser episode. Let's dive right in. In the story I just told, Mary's sister Shelley and the fiance Louis did her dirty, but they wanted her to basically dismiss her feelings of hurt to speak to them again, which is crazy, but it's a great example of how some people will treat you horribly and then not expect you to react or do anything about it. Mary was severely betrayed. She didn't yell at her sister, she didn't slap her, she simply decided to keep to herself because she lost her trust. The sister acted like she should just deal with it and keep getting stepped on, because in that moment, Mary did not please them. In the part one of this people pleaser episode that I recorded before, I talked about my personal history of people pleasing, and I gave examples of ways that I started recovering from that slash making different boundaries. In this part two, I'm actually going to use examples and inspiration from other people's stories, specifically from different subreddits on Reddit. Before we dive into some of these stories, let's get a reminder of people pleasing tendencies. For example, a people pleaser could be someone who's more worried about other people's opinions than their own. They could have difficulty enforcing boundaries even if they've established them previously. There may be an unwillingness to stand up for oneself if you're a people pleaser. Some people pleasers have the tendency to go along with others' point of view instead of their own. Others, people pleasers, want validation, or actually, I should say, need validation from other people in order to make their own decisions. This is something I definitely struggled with in the past. Some people pleasers actually often become a sounding board or a therapist for others. This one was interesting because I've been in situations like this and I never thought it was a people pleasing tendency until I looked it up. Some other people pleasers are sometimes afflicted with low self esteem, and that's often why they go over their boundaries or they'd rather take other people's opinions strongly compared to their own. And a lot of people pleasers also have a tendency to take the blame for things that are simply not their fault. Now, not every person will do everything on this list, but doing some of these behaviors regularly can become people pleasing. So just keep that in mind. Now, let's jump into some of these Reddit stories because I find that a lot of us are raised and are conditioned to people please, and it can be really difficult to find a way to get out of it. Let's dive into the first story from Reddit. This is a post from a man, and he wrote, I live in another city from my sister. I drive back to see my sister and her kids at least 4 times a year. I did this before I was married, and now I'm married with my wife and children, and we still go over to see my sister. And each time we go, we spend a few days there, and we've been doing that for over 10 years. He said his mom visits him and his family, but the sister has only visited twice in these 10 years. And the 2 times she visited, she complained the whole time that she had to take time off, even though she actually takes multiple vacations a year doing other things and going to other places. And the Reddit user realized he spent all those years going to see his sister, paid for her wedding, treats his sister and her kids every time he visits. For example, he takes the kids shopping, he buys them toys, takes the sister and them out to eat on beach trips. But after she complained, the 2 times that she even visited him, he decided not to visit as much because he felt like he was not important to her. He now felt so much less stress that he put on his wife and kids through having them travel all the way to see the sister and her family. But then he decided, you know what, I'm going to see her on my own terms. And he said it feels so good and feels so much more peaceful not to have to go out of his way to go see a sister that frankly doesn't really care to see him. And he said he wasn't doing those nice things because he wanted something from her. He did it because he loved her. But he felt like over time, he kind of did it as well to get her attention because she never really paid attention to him. And he realized, you know what, that's not the way for me to love my sister, and that's not the way for my sister to love me. If she really cared about me, she would make an effort to see me at least a few times more than the effort that I put my family through to go see her. And in that situation, of the behaviors that I read earlier, I'd say that the guy who posted on Reddit definitely had people pleaser tendencies because he traded favors and his availability for his sister's love. And also needed the validation that, oh, my sister loves me because she lets me come see her, but she never even had the initiative to go see him. And that's a heartbreaking thing, especially when you realize that someone who you love so much, someone who is your family, frankly, either doesn't really like you that much or does not really care about the effort that you're putting in to create a relationship with them. It's honestly one of the worst heartbreaks in the world. And I, unfortunately, have gone through this more than once with family. It's really, really tough to be in a position like this when you have to realize that they don't really care about you like that. All right, let's go to another Reddit post. This is someone who posted about their job. So I'll just read what they said. So they go, so I work in retail and it can become a 2-person job in some cases. Normally, I'm fine with helping others and doing anything I can to make sure our job gets done. However, sometimes I'm busy with a project and I can't even help if I wanted to. Months ago, I was a guy who would do anything for someone at work, even when they could easily do it themselves, but just didn't want to. Then it got so bad that my coworker said, you can't keep putting other people's work before yours because now your stuff isn't done. It wasn't uncommon for me to have half-finished projects. Today, I finally felt the effects of not being a people pleaser. My coworker needed me to do something, but I was busy. I told them I couldn't, and she said, see, this is why I like Kevin better, because you're just rude. Instantly, I felt horrible and bad, but soon I realized that I just can't do something to please someone. It'll only make me miserable. Obviously, when you can help someone, you should. But if it's detrimental to your job, I don't suggest it, even if they call you a jerk for it. This is an interesting one, right? Because the people-pleasing tendencies that this person displayed was difficulty enforcing boundaries. They were worried about other people more than they were worried about themselves. This person even says in his post that he would help other people before he even finished his own things. So actually at work, his performance was negatively affected because he was trying to please everyone else. And I'm glad that another coworker of his actually called this out because one, sometimes we don't necessarily realize this. And if we're so into people pleasing, it might be hard to really break the habit. And it can take sometimes for someone else from the outside to say, hey, you know that's not okay, right? You know that you should work on your things first instead of letting your performance fail just so that you can help somebody else, even though they can do the work themselves. They're taking advantage of you. And notice how, similar to the story I said at the beginning, when someone is used to you people pleasing and you decide not to do that, they turn on you. Like in the story with Mary and her sister turned on her. This person's coworker turned on them, even though I guarantee you they've helped this coworker a lot. And the one time they said, oh, sorry, I can't do it, all of a sudden the person calls them a jerk. Because some people want to take advantage of you. And when they can't, they see that as a threat. And all of a sudden, you really see how they feel about you, which is unfortunate. But I'm glad that this person finally realized this because it was really affecting their job. What if they lost their job? Those coworkers wouldn't care. So I think they were in for a rude awakening and it made them better in that way, even if they were called a jerk. I'll read you one final post before I move on. And here it goes. When my dad got a job making 2 times as much, he wanted to have savings for once in his life. We were always $100 away from disaster, and rarely we went with no utilities. But my mom wanted to write big checks to people and donate money. And she would fight with dad about it and say he had a quote, poverty mindset and cry and be resentful he wouldn't invest in investment scams on Facebook because then we'd have even more money and finally, quote, escape the grind. I finally got a mattress that wasn't 10 plus years old with a spring literally sticking out of the side. Yet my mom's priorities were to, quote, finally remodel my house. When it wasn't messed up in our life, it was just old. And I'm a bit embarrassed to say this, but sometimes we would do laundry in the bathtub because all of our appliances were rusting through. And all my mom thought about was wanting to change our floor tiles to feel important. And she just whined about it. Oh, that and her dreams of donating money. She always wished to be a millionaire so she could send all of us to boarding school and would openly daydream about being a millionaire all the time. Being stuck with these people felt like being in a prison. I feel bad for this person because for them, they're actually talking about their mother being a people pleaser. Their mother wanted validation from people outside of the home. She wanted people to say, oh, look, this lady is rich. Yet inside the home, her family was struggling. She was willing to essentially sell them out just for the outside appearance that she wanted. This is another thing I unfortunately have seen in my personal life. And sometimes it can be very sad when you think, I wish this person cared more about me than what other people thought about them. I've mentioned this before in my first people pleaser episode, but I am a recovering people pleaser, which is where the episode title came from. And to me, being a recovering people pleaser doesn't mean I am not helpful to others or that I don't make myself available. Personally, it's about increasing my confidence and setting boundaries where I can, especially in situations where I'm being taken advantage of. Now, I hope this doesn't come off as victim blaming because I'm also speaking to my past self here. Sometimes people pleasers think that trying to help as much as possible makes them a good person. And yes, helping people can signify you as a good person. However, if you are just helping them for them to think that you're a great person, that's not the best way to approach it. If you are only doing it for the validation, that's also something to consider. Obviously, no one should be taken advantage of, or if you realize some people will never give you help at all, you have to consider moving accordingly, or the dynamic will continue. I will say also, yes, while there are people who will try to take advantage of you because they know that you're willing to help them with anything, there are people who'd rather hear the truth and they'd rather you be honest with them. Saying yes when you'd rather not means you're actually not being honest with that person who you're close to or who you're trying to maintain a friendship, a family relationship, whatever it may be with. And that person may actually start to distrust you, or they may stop sharing things with you. For most people, especially people who care about you, if you say an honest no, then they will respect that, and that's how it should be. But if you're skirting around it or you're just saying yes begrudgingly, then you may actually start to affect some of the positive relationships that you do have in life. So here's the real truth. And this is another post from Reddit. And it goes, ironically, the world doesn't reward people pleasers. The people getting the most respect are people who have confidence, firm boundaries, and are willing to share their opinions and stick by them. It's also hard to try to get a little better at this because it's far too easy to slip back into bad habits. In some ways, it's easier to decide to completely flip the script on this and step out there with a determination to stand up for yourself. Be your own person and literally not care if that causes someone to like you or not, because your opinion matters more to you than anyone else's. Remember, the most valuable thing you have is your own time. So your default answer on anything should be either no or I'll check my calendar and get back to you on that. The default answer should never be yes. Also, there's no need to be mean or aggressive when standing up for your boundaries. Just be pleasant, polite, but firm. If anyone asks for an explanation, you do not owe them one. Just keep repeating variations of, that just won't work for me, or thanks for asking, but I can't do it, maybe next time, or sorry, you'll have to ask someone else. It's easier said than done, though, right? Because people pleasers need to unlearn the learned behavior, and that's very difficult to do for any of us. Trust me, I know. Let's say you typically agree to do things, even though deep down you really don't want to or you need more time to consider. Like I said, you might say something like, let me think about it and get back to you, or when do you need an answer? So that you can give yourself proper space to make a decision. If people pressure you for an immediate answer for something that is not urgent, it should become a no. Again, it's easier said than done. And just like with anything else, the best way to do is practice. Practice in the mirror, practice with a friend. Have them keep asking you the same question and you saying no to that. You can start small. For example, have your friend ask you, hey, can you make me a cup of tea? And you could say no. Of course, that's a very easy and simple thing. And it may feel very scripted, but over time, it'll become natural to say yes or no more firmly. Practice with things that you want to say no to. For example, your friend tells you to cook them a 3-course meal, or I don't know, clean their house upside down for 4 hours. That's a pretty easy thing to say no to because that's a ridiculous ask. But if you practice saying no to some of those ridiculous asks, it makes it easier to say no, even to some of the smaller things. When someone asks you to do something and you normally would say yes, go ahead and say, sure, but I need to do XYZ first. For example, can you go to the store for me and get milk? You can say something like, sure, but first I need to finish cleaning the house. So if there's any time left in the day, I'll reach back out to you to see if you still need it. And if so, I'll go. Sound good? That way you're not outright rejecting them, but you are putting your needs first and then you can fulfill their need. Or let's say it's the same thing. Can you go to the store and get me some milk? You could say, I can't today, but I'm open next Thursday to get milk for you between 4 and 5 p.m. Would that work for you? Give them an alternative. If it doesn't work for your schedule, there's no need for you to go out of your way to do that. Provide an alternative. The hope is that they'll take you up on the alternative. If you really just don't want to go get the milk for them, you could say, I can't today, but next Friday I'm heading to the grocery store and I'm happy to bring you some milk then. Of course, this isn't just about milk. It's about still being a helpful person towards someone that you like, but not dropping what you need to do for yourself and always putting yourself as last priority. The world is already hard enough. We all have so much going on. We should be our own priorities when we can. Of course, I know this is very nuanced. If someone is a parent and they have kids, I understand the children will take priority. That's not what I'm saying in terms of not people pleasing. I just mean in the circumstances where you are allowing everyone else's needs to come before your needs, especially to a detriment to yourself. Like in the example of the Reddit post I read about the person at work, where they're not even finishing their projects because they're just helping out other people. That's not helpful for that person. Those people could do their own work. So it's in those types of extreme situations where I say, you know what, you need to put yourself first before you can do anything else. Think about if you've ever flown. They always say on the airplane, when the masks go down, put your own mask on first before you try to put someone else's mask on. Because if you faint because you're trying to help someone else, then you can't help yourself and then you can't even help that person. That's an example that I always think about in terms of people pleasing. Again, that is an extreme case, but it can really manifest in different ways. And as a recovering people pleaser, this is something that I still continue to work on because, yes, I do want to be helpful to people and I still do help people when they ask me. But I do assess the situation based on when can I do it? How much effort can I put in there? And are there any alternatives to provide for that person? Or can they simply just ask someone else? Because I am not the savior of the world, but I can still help out when I can if it's reasonable for me. So if you are a recovering people pleaser like me, leave a comment on a time when you said no to something that you typically said yes to and how you felt in that moment. Thanks for listening to another episode of Lush Life, No Labels. Like and subscribe to my podcast on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. Cheers to your lush life and see you later.